Hi everyone, just gonna hop on here and show us how to do these cool down questions and check your work. So number one, order from least to greatest. So first I'm going to look at the whole numbers and I see that this one is the least. I'll put that as a 1. And then they all have the same whole number after that. So now I need to look at the decimal. Um, this one would be the next least decimal because it has a 1 in the tenths place. And then we have a 5 in the tenths place, and then an 8. So there you go, from least to greatest. Number 2, which number has the least value? Looking at our whole number gets us that one done. So that's A. And then number 3, converting to a decimal, 7/100ths. You're going to have a 0, a decimal point, 0/10ths, and 7/100ths, like that. Number 4, convert to a fraction, that is 4/10. So just like you would say it, you're going to write it 4/10. Number 5 is 67/100ths more or less or equal to a half. Show your thinking on the number line. So the great thing about decimals on a number line is that you do not need to equally partition it like you did with fractions. So I can just show 1/2, which is the same as 0 and 5/10. And then I'm gonna, that was a little sloppy, and then I'm gonna show 67/100ths right here. There we go. So that would be more than 1/2. Number 6, which letter best represents 2/10? Okay, let's look here. Well, again, using 1/2 to link, 1/2 is 5/10. So about halfway between 0 and 1/2 would be 1/4, which would be 25/100ths, or 2/10 and 5/100ths. So I'm going to say B is pretty close. Looking at number 7, let's order these on a number line. Again, I do not have to start at 0. I don't have to equally partition. I am just simply looking to get these in order. So I think I'm going to put my benchmarks here of 3, and over here my benchmark of 4. I'm going to change colors here, hopefully, to get us a little more detail. So I'm going to start with 3 and 1/10 is going to go pretty close to 3. And I'm just going to, for the ease of drawing on the screen here, I'm just going to write A because that's what I had there. And then I'm looking at B and D are really close to halfway. So D, 3 and 48/100ths, is a little bit less than half. And then B is a little bit more than half, 3 and 53/100ths. And then when I look at point C, pretty close to 4. So something like that. Alrighty. Number 8, using less than, equal to, or greater than to compare and drawing the base 10 blocks. Okay, so they both have the same number of holes. So we saw in our reading that we could use those base 10 blocks to show one hole, and then 7/10 we're going to show those long skinny sticks. I like to draw them differently. I like to draw my long skinny pieces as just a line. I think it helps kids to have a totally different motor plan for how they draw their tenths and hundredths, or even when they're younger and drawing tens and ones. It really helps instead of it all becoming rectangles. So actually, if I had hundredths, which I don't, but let's say I did, then I would draw these as dots, just so that kids have a totally different motor plan for each piece. And so as they're working quickly, they don't start to look like each other. But anyway, that is not part of our problem, so we won't worry about those right now. So you should have, get my eraser going here, you should have one hole and 7/10. I believe I have 7 there. And then one hole and 3/10 on that side. So you're using those base 10 blocks in a new way, and those are directly shown in your chapter if you need to go back and look at those. Moving on to number 9, converting to a decimal. This is 65/100ths, so I'm going to put my 0, my decimal point, and 65/100ths. Number 10, making 8/10 a fraction. It's right there in its name, 8/10. Number 11, making all of these equivalent. So 46 hundredths, didn't leave myself a lot of room, 46 hundredths. Making that a fraction, and then I'm going to put this over to the side for number 12 so I have a little more room. 3 hundredths as a decimal, or 3%, it's going to look like this. There you go. Number 13, which sentence is true? We have to look very carefully. A is not true because of the tenths place. B is not true because of our hundredths place. C is not true looking at the tenths place. And D is true because 6/10 is more than 6/100. So D is our true statement. Number 14, using our visual model to solve. I'm going to start to color this in. So I've got 3/4 times 3. So here's 3/4. And then I'm going to do another 1, 2, 3/4. And then I'm going to do another 1, 2, 3/4 times 3. So that should get me a total of 2 1/4. That's a review from last chapter. Just making sure that we have that for our quiz. And then looking at number 15, using some multiplication of fractions here. Again, I'm going to do 3/5 times 3. So there's the first 3/5. Then the second 3/5. 1, 2, 3. And then the third 3/5. There we go. If you wanted to have those shown on each one, you could, but I think it's easier to just go from left to right and start filling top to bottom. So I can see my total at the end is going to be 1 4/5. Okay. Moving on to number 16, using that base 10 model, I can see that there are 8/10 and that there are another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hundredths. So decimal form would be 0 and 85 hundredths. Percent would be 85%. And then fraction would be, I'm going to write it just like this, 85 over 100. There we go. Okay, and moving on to the very last question, showing this, again, base 10 values here as a decimal. So those are 4 tenths. So that's going to be 4 tenths as a decimal. 4 tenths as a percent is going to be 40%. And then as a fraction, I could just put 4 tenths, or you could put 40 100ths if you would like. Both of those are equivalent. They'll both work. So if you have any questions or concerns as you're going over this material, feel free to contact me and we will get you on the right path. Otherwise, I will see you in the next module.